Thank you so much for tuning in to Everything Catholic again, and thank you so much for your support of this channel, and I hope all of you who are always here, you have been learning a lot, especially when it comes to the saints in the Church. Now for this video, this will be from my recent interview with Father Joseph Iannuzzi, and I asked him about the nature of sin during the era of peace, which is one way to put it, the period after the Antichrist, and the devil during this time will be enchained. Please listen to this.
During the era of peace, will there be sin or will there not be sin? Well, according to sacred scripture and the writings of saints, as well as the teachings of the magisterium, we know that there will be a period of peace. We find this in Revelation chapter 20. St. John refers to it as 1,000 years of peace. Pope John Paul II, in his encyclical On the Threshold of the Third Millennium, spoke of a millennium of unity and Christianity, in which Christianity will experience a springtime and a flourishing of vocations. Millennium is 1,000 years, right? The Blessed Mother at Fatima also spoke of this when she made a prophecy that many nations would be annihilated from the face of the earth, but that in the end, her Immaculate Heart would triumph, and she will give to the world an era of peace. An era is a long period of time. We also find in the writings of the early church fathers and saints teachings on this very theme of a long period of peace. For example, the writings of Saints Papias, Justin Martyr, Saint Methodius, Hippolytus, and some ecclesiastical writers like Tertullian, Lactantius, the Doctor St. Augustine, even Cardinal Jean Danielou. They talk about this period in human history, not at the end of the world, before the end of the world, in human history, where there will be peace on earth. Now, the question is, what kind of peace will this be? Will it be a peace where there exists no sin, or will sin exist but not on the scale that it does today? Well, we know from these teachings that I just mentioned that the Church teaches that there can be no utopia before the final coming of Christ, no sinless society on earth before the final coming of Christ in the flesh. So if there can be no sinless society, how do we therefore explain the presence of this peace before the final coming of Christ? And this is how. We go first to sacred scripture, where Isaiah speaks of, the beasts of the earth being at peace with humans on earth. And we also find it in Zephaniah, and we find it in other writings of saints. For example, I'll quote you some passages from scriptures here. The beasts of the earth you need not dread. You shall be in league with the stones of the field, and the wild beasts shall be at peace with you. Again, and it is right, and when creation is restored, all animals should obey and be in subject to man, and revert to food originally given by God, that is, the productions of the earth. And at the end of 6,000 years, all wickedness must be abolished from the earth, and righteousness reign for 1,000 years. Another passage, all who are alert to do evil will be cut off. Now, because death is the consequence of original sin, we know this from Romans chapter 5, verse 12, whose concupiscence or inclination to sin remains in the baptized, which is the teaching of the Council of Trent. Though not sin itself, death cannot be vanquished prior to sin's defeat. The Council of Trent taught this, that as long as man is on earth, sin will exist. So sin's defeat occurs at the end of the era of peace, which is the end of the world, not at the beginning. So in Revelation, it talks about a long period of peace, symbolized by the expression 1,000 years, toward the end of which Satan is released from his confinement, because Satan, during that period of peace, will be confined. According to the approved prophetic messages of Father Gobi, Satan will be enchained by the Rosary. And this period will be symbolically 1,000 years, a long period of time. But toward the end, Satan will be released and raise up Gog and Magog for the final battle, and then there will be the end. That's when sin will be defeated. Okay? But before that, there will be this era of peace. And the fifth session of the General Council of Trent condemned the idea of an historic sinless society in which the inclination to sin no longer remains in the baptized. But it refrained from condemning the modification of sin's active psychosomatic influence. So what does this mean? While the law of sin remains in us till death, the lives of the saints remind us of the mitigation of its active influence on our mind and body, hence psychosomatic active influence. For example, Saint Catherine of Siena, Saint John of the Cross, Teresa of Avila, these mystical doctors speak of the state of spiritual marriage or mystical union, where voluntarily sin ceases altogether in their lives. They arrived at a point where they ceased to deliberately offend God and neighbor. Okay? Some fathers of the church generally ascribe this spiritual state to the elect who make it into the era of peace. And I bring this out in my my work endorsed by 2 Catholic bishops, including an archbishop, entitled The Splendor of Creation. Now, because original sin remains, so must the sacraments that are ordered to the soul's purification and perfection. So throughout the era of peace, there will continue to be the sacrament of holy orders to give us the sacraments, because we will all be conceived in original sin throughout the era of peace, and in fact, until the final coming of Christ. So we will still need to be baptized, even during this reign of the divine will on earth, even during the triumph of the Immaculate Heart, even during the Eucharistic reign of Jesus. But because Satan will be confined during this period of peace, sin will be modified, not done away with. Okay, so we find this in Revelation, chapter 20, verse 7, at the end of the era, sin will intensify again after the period of peace during this final final battle of God against Satan, where God definitively defeats Satan and sends him into that fiery pool where the false prophet and the beast previously had been cast, which is found in chapter 19 of the book of Revelation, 19:20. So in answer to the question, sin will be modified. It won't be anything like it is today. Why? Because not only will Satan be enchained, but the influences that impact us from Satan's activity on earth, namely the flesh, the world, and the eyes, will also lose their force considerably, because Satan won't be active as active as he is now. So throughout this period, sin will be tremendously modified.
Well then, that will be all for the video this time. And as always, thank you so much for taking the time to be here with us. And hopefully all of you have learned so much from this video. And remember, if ever you have any feedback or suggestion, please let us know in the comments below. And from the bottom of my heart, thank you so much for your continuous support, contributions, and prayers. And until the next one, thanks again for watching, and may God bless you.